before the weekend. Before the weekend.
G'day, folks, and welcome to another episode 6, actually, of Before the Weekend. It's really great to have you with us, either listening or watching on YouTube. I'm joined here by the irrepressible Kasey McDonald. Kasey, how has your week been?
Yeah, it's been quite busy, actually. Thanks, Pete. And what about yours?
Well, it has been busy. It's getting busier. I'm on personal leave this weekend, just jumping back in to do this podcast and then rejoining my family for the wedding of my daughter to her fiance. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's the first wedding of any of my children and probably the first in that generation. So yeah, big family gathering. Too many Schravemades for your liking, let's put it that way.
And how's your lovely wife coping with all the Schravemades?
She seems to be doing okay. I mean, I think by now, 24, 25 years in, I think she's probably fairly used to it now. And it's been great. So yeah, I think all is going well.
I hope you've got a great speech, better than some of those that you do for me. So I really hope that you've saved your daughter any type of embarrassment on her big day.
Oh, I think the last 2 times I've introduced you, they have been nothing but professional. It was that one before, and that's the one that you're holding on to. So, and we could go into that today, but we won't on the podcast.
No, we won't.
Moving right along, let's get into this week's, because we've got a bit to unpack and talk about. Okay. So joining us last week we spoke about an article which involved a Harcourt's deal with the REA group, and we were kind of speculating on a few things there, what the deal was about and whatever else. And we're also speculating about what this meant for the real estate industry partners, the REIP. And I even said on the episode it'd be great to have Sadhna on to talk about that. Well, not only do we have Sadhna joining us later in the program, we've got the CEO of Harcourt's Australia, Adrian Knowles. He's going to be joining us to talk about that deal, and Sadhna obviously to look at it and from a REIP perspective. So that's coming up, just a bit of a teaser. That'll be later in the episode. But I thought what I might look at first is a breaking news story. It actually came from, I think it's been a couple of weeks now that I've been aware that there's been the collapse of this buyer's agency called Dashdot. There have been a few news articles about it, and there's been even some more today. What do you know about that?
Well, I think what I've sort of read in short is that I think it collapsed back in May, but it's obviously only started to kind of make the headlines now. And it's probably about estimated liabilities of around 16.6 million is what's been shared. I think the liquidators are obviously going through their affairs at the moment and understanding what needs to be released to creditors.
Yeah, it doesn't help that the owner of the Dashdot is a guy called Goose. I don't think that adds to the credibility of the organisation. Obviously, not throwing any stones. Companies go into liquidation every day, but I think the more interesting part about this are the stories emerging about how customers were chased up for payment. So Dashdot, I probably should rewind. If you're not aware and you're a listener and you've never heard of Dashdot before, they're effectively a buyer's agent. Buyer's agents are increasingly becoming more and more prevalent in our market today. And I think that has a lot to do with the supply and demand issues. We've got a lot of people unable to find housing. And when the competition heats up for housing, I think we see a lot more buyer's agents, which are, if you speak to the real estate buyers advocates of Australia or PIPA, the Property Investment Professionals Australia, there are legitimate professionals who execute that role on a regular basis, and they do a fantastic job of it, actually guiding people through the process of purchasing a property. Now, Dashdot appears to have been one of those entities. They provided, I suppose they'd call it end-to-end property investment services. They'd look at a portfolio strategy. They offered borderless investing and acquisition. I think the biggest claim that I didn't like is they claim to source under market value homes to strong capital growth prospects. Now, a lot of property investment companies do that, but that's a big claim unless you've got some kind of independent truth to back that up. That's difficult. But in the emergence of the administration, there's a couple of things I just haven't liked about this. I don't know how you're feeling about it, but there's a few things that I am seeing that just shouldn't really form part of our industry. And I think the number one thing that I can put my finger on is that these guys were collecting fees for properties that they effectively hadn't purchased. And there doesn't appear to be any regulations from a buyer's advocate or buyer's agent's perspective that means that those fees are held in trust. That appears to be the biggest one. So you and I both know that if I'm selling a property and I go to sell it, the buyer's deposit is held in trust. The agent's commission is held in trust. All of these things are held in trust until there is a resolution, which will be settlement. But I don't know whether that's not legislated. I don't know enough about that area, but this appears to have been prepaid buyer's agency's fee. So the consumer was paying them up front, and now these are services that quite obviously will never be delivered. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, look, I totally agree. And I think to add to that is that there's some comments also around the behaviour of that they knew that the ship was going down, but they also kept taking on more, more customers, right, as a part of the process. So not only were they still taking their existing customers' money, but they were actually taking and holding other money of brand new people where they were still promoting the services. And then within days after that, sending out emails saying that they were in administration.
Yeah. And I mean, that's obviously not good optics. We don't know whether, how knowledgeable the people chasing the money were aware of the issues that were there. It could have just been, a management thing where they knew that there was trouble, but they were telling people it was business as usual. It's really hard in these instances to sort out the wood from the trees. But, I think all of their shares, it's now been highlighted by ASIC that all of their shares were sold to a Cayman Island shelf company for $100. Not good optics, not throwing stones, not sort of casting aspersions. This is a difficult one to watch. And I think the biggest loser here, again, I don't know how many times we've said this on Before the Weekend, but the biggest loser here is the trust and confidence in the industry all over.
Definitely.
There's a bunch of buyers out there that have lost millions and millions of dollars who were expecting a house, 16.5 million I'm having reported to me. But how do those people move forward with another buyer's agents in the future? You can put all of these safeguards in place, but it's very hard to repair that kind of reputational damage.
Yeah, definitely. I think it came, from some of the things that I'm reading about it as well, is that, it was a shock to some of their, customers that they'd been supporting for a little while as well, but also some had restructured financially how in which they were utilizing those funds. And what I mean by that is taking it out of their super and being able to then buy investments. So now they've lost that money and they've lost it out of their super. So, there's setbacks here in all different ways. It's not, just money that's lost, but it's also, your future that as to why these decisions are getting made, right? Like, and we should be thinking about that. But just on the other point before, one of the other notes actually indicated that they'd received information that it was under administration and the CEO was in fact still emailing customers, suggesting a different pathway forward for them to partner with another buyer agency. So again, kind of the optics on that of but you're connecting with your customers saying maybe go down this way when your customers have already lost trust in you. Why would they decide to choose a partner of your choice to decide to have it again as their buyer agent?
Yeah, you're right, and we'll probably hear how this plays out over the next little while. Like
Hmm.
obviously the offshore ownership transfers, the share transfer is different. The industry risk, I see Rebar, the real estate buyers advocate, this Australia has already tried to separate the collapse of one company from the broader buyers agency sector, and I'll back that up. There are some really
Hmm.
good buyers agents doing fantastic things out there, and you know, it's easy for me to sit here and say don't lose heart, but
Hmm.
don't lose heart. I think if I was to offer any person advice, having been an investment property salesperson myself in the past, if I was to offer any advice to a person considering that, it would be around the payment of fees up front.
Hmm.
Um, Too much can go wrong. There's too much that you don't have control over in the process. Um, you know, I would accept those funds being paid up front if they were paid into trust and you had a right of refusal over the top of it. There was a, you know, some kind of way to mediate if there was a disagreement between parties. But if you're paying up front for buyer's agency fees, what protection do you have? What consumer protection do you have if the party decides to walk away? And that really appears to have been what's happened here. But, you know, on top of that, Casey, there are some
Yeah.
other things I didn't like about these guys. The influencer style property advice, they're very heavily social media content led.
Hmm.
There were red flags. Red flags aren't enough to sort of come out swinging and go, you know, these are guys are dodgy. Don't go down the line with them. But you know, I think you're with me. The disappointing part about all of this is there's a bunch of mum and dads somewhere out there that have lost $16.5 million that they'll probably
Hmm.
never see again. ASIC can clean it up as best they like. You know, there might be criminal charges and the rest of it, civil charges. We don't know. It just depends on the wrongdoing. But at the end of the day, I think everyone's lost already.
Totally agree. Definitely with you on that one.
Mm. Let's move on. Let's go to the second story that I've kind of picked out tonight. Obviously, we've spoken tonight, this week. Obviously, we've spoken a bit about the budget. I think the one article that that really took my eye this week was an article reporting that the Queensland rental crisis and negative gear changes are probably a more significant
Hmm.
issue than we previously thought. The article says that Queensland has reportedly lost almost 13,000 rental bedrooms over the course of 3 years. And experts are warning that the proposed tax changes are probably going to worsen that investor problem. So
Hmm.
it was an analysis by a company called Founded, and it reports 12,929 bedrooms are lost across 24, 25, and 2026. So in May of this year, 993 landlords exited, while only 661 investors entered. So the issue is not just the landlords exiting, as I understand it in the article, but the lack of investors that are coming in to replace the stock of landlords that are exiting.
Hmm.
And so now with proposed negative gearing and CGT changes, what's anticipated is it's going to discourage new investor purchases.
Hmm.
This is a big story on the back of a succession of ones we've had.
Hmm.
Um, Tim Lawless referred to the lack of elasticity in the tenancy process now, where he firmly believes that there's not a lot more room for tenants to move upwards in paying out further wages from their weekly income than what is there at the moment. And if we're seeing a decrease in the amount of stock, that would naturally mean there's going to be more competition for the stock that's on the market. And then we have this knock-on effect where things move forward. What are your thoughts?
Hmm. Yeah, look, I think that we've probably all underestimated how serious the supply issue is, and I think we probably all haven't. In fact, it was Antonia, the CEO of the REIQ, in our
Mm,
first episode, who actually put all of this down to exactly this issue, that it's a supply issue, right? And she has continued to talk about this. But I think here, we're talking about real families that are now having to compete harder than they ever have before for fewer homes. So, you've just said there was 900 odd that have left and only 600 coming back in. So we've now lost 300 odd. And so that's now 300 odd families, couples, whatever that looks like, that now potentially don't have a home. So
mm,
what does that actually mean? And what are we doing as a government to help support the supply issue. Right, but at the moment, all we seem to be doing is trying to figure out how can we get more money out of everyone's back pockets instead of actually really addressing the issue here.
Yeah, it's a real problem. Like I remember back in the day when I would go looking at rental properties. I'm sure you remember this too. We would look at a house, a holistic house, and go, you know what? I'm going to look to rent this, whether I was by myself or with my brother or with somebody else that would be renting it. We'd be looking for a whole house. These days, most investors in Queensland are going looking for a room. Like let that sink in for a bit. They're not asking questions about whether there's a shared kitchen or a shared bathroom. They're lucky if that exists, but that they're actually looking for a room. It's now per room per week that most of the transactions are being done, and it's like, how do you live on that? I've got a story. It's not limited to Queensland. Like if you're in New South Wales, Victoria, Adelaide, Perth, I know these things are going down there as well. Here in Melbourne, where I am today, my daughter and her husband, who are moving in together because, husband to be, because they're getting married, they have a former flatmate who has 1 week to find accommodation. And like, to me, that seems like an almost impossible task in this day and age. 1 week to find accommodation just sounds like a whole heap of anxiety and stress that nobody wants. So like, yeah. And just to talk to one of the things you said, I do think we all know about this. I think people like Antonio, people like Jacob Kane, our REI heads, different bodies, even like the building authorities, the QBCC to an extent, the master builders. I think the property investor advocacy bodies, all of them have actually been saying for the longest period of time that we have a chronic supply and demand issue. And whilst it's multifaceted, the one thing that seems to be universally agreed on by everyone except for our federal government and to an extent state governments around the place, like here in Victoria, is that we need to build houses and we need to build them fast. And like, to me, it's more important than the Snowy Hydro public works program that we had running back, decades ago. We need to be pumping out affordable housing that goes to people who need basic shelter. We need housing going to our public sector, because, we haven't built any here in Queensland for 10 to 15 years. The Liberal government, who only just got in, have only just gotten that ball rolling. And in the other states, it's just the same. But every single place you go, every single expert you talk to, it seems universally a fairly simple solution. Let's start building houses again. But I don't know. Obviously, it's more difficult than that. I'm an investor. I have a block of land who would like to build a house on it, and I can't do that because the amount of money that it would cost me to put a house on it doesn't equal the amount of rent that I would get back.
Correct. Yeah, and I think with interest rates rising, and I know they've just we've just had that kind of pass that they're not increasing, and maybe won't be again until August. But we've got construction costs that are higher. The cost now to just buy a block of land, we've got changes in tenancy reforms that are happening around the country that make it even harder. So it's just really shaken the confidence, I think, out of investors saying, is this the country that we should actually invest in from a property perspective? And I think, I've been a property investor for a very long time, and I don't mind risk, right? But like all of us, you want certainty. And I just don't think that we've got that at the moment. And, I saw the ad last night from the Brisbane mayor, or whatever they were talking about on the news, about the budget that they're bringing out in Queensland. Now, they have put funds to supply government housing and to be building out, which was fantastic. But then on the back of that, they've taken stuff away and they've decided to add a program in at South Bank for people to come and do yoga in the morning. And that's where they feel. So instead of adding that extra $1 million on for further housing supplies in areas that we really do need it, they've decided to put some yoga on in the morning instead. So there's going to probably be some uproar in Queensland from Brisbane city councils that, the people in those regions saying, is that something we really need when we've got homeless people sleeping in between the buildings in Brisbane City because there is no place for them to go.
Yeah, I went to Musgrave Park, which is the one behind the Brisbane Convention Exhibition Centre, and I was stunned, not just by the amount of homeless people there, but by who they were. These were the single females in 18 to 22 who were working. They were living in a tent. Like, I watched one lady leave for her barista or her wait staff job, leave all of her earthly possessions in the tent. She's gone off and done that. She came back later. They're charging their iPhones or smartphones on power poles. These are not what we think of as homeless people. These are these are me and you. This was us. I won't give away your age, but this was me 20 years ago.
Yeah, right. Okay. We're going there, are we, today?
Well, I didn't. I deliberately didn't go there. I didn't go there.
But before we get on to the next one, though, I just want to add in, right, about just also generally how this is affecting, I think, our frontline property managers, and of course, our real estate business owners. And I think, the conversations that we're having all across the industry, there's a lot more pressure involved in those conversations. They're a lot more emotionally heightened. And there are just some of these things, though, that we all can't fix, and they're things that are out of our control. But I think that we generally do need to be talking about them, and we absolutely need to get behind the advocates like the REIs and actually make sure that we're supportive of what they're trying to actually advocate for us in market as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could talk about this until the cows come home, because there's so much more. I've heard of tenants putting off maintenance because they don't want to be kicked out of a property. They're actually not reporting it. There's so much to this angle that we could go on. But for the sake of this week, let's move on. Who doesn't love a good real estate agent spat?
And of course, it had to be on the Gold Coast.
And of course, it had to be on the Gold Coast. But this one's a little bit different because, unlike our other spats, which is generally she stole my sign, he stole my sign, I put an egg tag on it. We've reported on that a couple of weeks ago. This one's between a selling agent and a buyer's agent. Look, I'm not going to mention the names. We don't do that. We really try hard not to dump these people in it or give them any kind of glory about the spat that they're having, which in turn tarnishes the industry. But there's a couple of things here. So there's a fairly vocal buyer's agent who's come out and said, I think he actually indicated 2 houses that were on the market and said in their right mind, who would buy these? Now is the wrong time to buy. Made a bunch of aspersions about the buyer that's there. And of course, the selling agent went and sold them and got pretty much a record price on those. Of course, he was going to have his right of refusal. So the properties were located Aura in Burleigh Waters, it sold for 6.1 million after passing in at 5.7. And another property, I love the way they've all got names. I need a name for my house. Barjo El Sol sold for 4.8 million after a long campaign. But the buyer's agent, so he had warned buyers not to get swept up in emotional price guides. The selling agents come out and argued the results prove the strength of the Southern Gold Coast market. Look, I think Tim said that, Tim Lawless from RP Data, he basically pointed to the southeast Queensland and said supply and demand is going to continue to drive prices up. And so regardless of what your friendly buyer's agent's saying, I do believe that the data and the numbers that Tim speaks to are a little bit more powerful than the gut instinct of a buyer's agent. So, that to me is, whilst it's not totally unexpected, I think the stat that then ensued at the end of that, where the seller's agent has called the buyer's agent out and said, you should have sold this. You shouldn't have said these things about the property. You don't know what you're talking about, that kind of thing. Well, it doesn't do anything for us. The buyer's agent actually had some points. I had a look in that. He probably went a little bit too far. The seller's agent's obviously taken it personally. He's going to say he didn't, but by his reaction, he probably did. And now the buyer's agent's doubling down, saying, my points are still correct. Okay, they sold at a record price. My points are still correct that he wouldn't get swept up in the emotion of buying property on the Gold Coast at the moment. So, well, I don't know. What do you think? Do we give this breath or?
Oh, look, I think at the end of the day, what a buyer's willing to pay for a property is what they're willing to pay for, it, right? Like,
That's
so
right.
I mean, I could sit there and say, well, I think that this house is worth this money. It's just like my house. I'm like, oh,
Mm,
how dare that they only say that it's worth this from an algorithm. Actually, I saw an Instagram video today with a lady exactly saying that. Don't trust the desktop appraisals and the algorithms. Let me come out and tell you what you think your home's worth. At the end of the day, we're all going to have an opinion. But
mm,
the right opinion on the day is that buyer who wants to buy that home, and that's what
mm.
they're willing to pay for it, really.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like property investors or buyers agents giving property investors advice in the
Hmm.
6 and 7 millions, because generally I've found somebody who has 6 and 7 million won't care about an extra one on the end of it to secure the property that they want in the
Yeah.
area that they want. So I just thought the buyer's agent probably it was look, I know that it's a lot of it's a social media play.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to social media. I'm going to give really strong, dominant advice. People are going to come and ask me then for advice. I'm going to sell my services on the back end. I'm not an idiot. I know how
Yeah.
this works. I just think he chose the wrong properties in doing that. But hey,
Yeah.
or fair play to him. Everyone's entitled to an opinion. And so I wish him the best in his further judgment down the track.
Look, at the end of the day, I'll ask you a question, Pete. If you are going to buy a $6 million house,
Hmm.
like what's going to really drive that purchase decision? Are you looking for, if I'm going to spend $6 million, are you
Yeah.
buying it for the location, the views, because its
Yeah.
house has got a name, or like why? So
Well, these were both homes. They're not the kind of thing that somebody's going to advise in investment property. So
yeah.
to me, it seemed really simple that it was going to be a homeowner coming in who wanted the convenience of living there. They might have wanted the status of Sol Taco El Barjo or whatever the property was called. They might have wanted that. That might have been important to them. They were beautiful houses. I had a look through them like online. Yeah. I just went down with my 6 mil and had a look through those.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I had a look online. They were stunning properties. Somebody's obviously fallen in love and gone. But here's even
Yeah.
the interesting thing is that they didn't sell at auction, but the selling agent obviously pushed to then go and get the deals across the line. So I think the selling agent probably has the right to come back and go
Hmm.
tongue in cheek. You
Yeah.
got that wrong, buddy. You got that
Hmm.
wrong. How about those apples?
Yeah.
Hold my beer a second.
Selling agent had those negotiation skills we've been talking about the last few
Yeah.
weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the thing to learn is let's not trash talk each other in the industry. Let's go with that.
Absolutely. Hmm.
We got
Yeah.
two that are super quick to talk about. We have one is a trust account case. I know we've covered a few of these. So
Hmm.
with this one, this is a principal who has pled guilty to, or pleaded. I don't think there's such a word as pleaded guilty to fraudulently converting trust account money and causing a trust account deficiency. So the
Hmm.
reported amount is $164,340. We have seen jail sentences handed out in this instance in the past. We definitely have, right? We've seen quite a few of them. Apparently, it was converted for personal use. We've heard about this before as well.
Hmm.
We've heard about holidays, shopping sprees, buying things for the kids, that kind of thing. She's been convicted. Her license has been cancelled. She's going to serve an 18-month community corrections order, 300 hours community work. There's a mental health program involved in there, and I wonder if that's staved off jail time. And there's also
Possibly.
an order to pay compensation. So, it ties out a pretty bad 2-3 weeks in the area of trust accounting for
Hmm.
Queensland and Victoria, if I'm honest.
Yeah, well, I just actually saw the information about the Queensland case that we were chatting on a few episodes ago. So
Mm,
it has now been 4 years jail. That this this person has been sentenced to. They siphoned more than 116,000 into over 200, which equated to over 200 transfers into multiple bank accounts. So they also pleaded guilty, and they were sentenced to 4.5 years jail term of three counts of fraud.
Yeah, there's something about this most current one that we're not aware of. I think it has to do with the mental health order that's in there.
Yeah.
I suspect that has stayed off jail time, because I've certainly seen jail time given for misappropriation. We'll move on from that. Obviously, I think the one thing I would raise, and maybe a discussion point for the future is, at what point do we suggest that the trust account shouldn't be operated by the real estate agency?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think it also is why there are many that are considering moving to different platforms that are available that maybe don't have that kind of, yeah, right, where that is just completely done. It's via a wallet app system, and it's, there's no actual trust account where you've got someone physically going in and transferring funds in and out, so to speak. So, yeah, look, I think it's something that the industry needs to have a very good think about. But more importantly, that the agencies themselves around their processes in this instance, who have they got that are doing those tasks? And principals out there, it's your licenses on the line as well. So what are you doing to make sure that you're checking over these matters? And I know that in these situations, I think both of these cases, they actually were the principal.
Yeah, they were the principal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate it's also difficult, but there needs to be maybe some different checking mechanisms that we bring into the industry, or maybe it is that the trust accounts are not held by them anymore.
Yeah, but you know how you go to a casino and you see, I don't know, you probably don't see them because you don't go to the urinal, but I see them above the urinal. There's signs that say, "Are you having gambling problems? Here is the help." If you're a principal and you're listening to this today and you're operating a trust account, and you know that is a danger for you to sort of dip your money in and grab some of that out, especially if you need it, maybe you need to take that temptation away. Maybe that's something that you do as a form of self-help. You go in and look at other options, holding it in solicitors' accounts or whatever it may be that is still inside the regulations. But, I'd urge you, if you're listening to this today and that's a temptation for you, just take it away. So it's not there. I'd rather see you, happy and living a life outside of jail than in because you thought this might be a solution to, whatever worries there are out there.
Yeah, and again, it just brings it back to the real estate credibility piece that it kind of seems to be a theme in every episode, right? And this forms that, these articles are going live to the public consumer who deal with us every single day. And so again, it's allowing them to lose trust in who we are and what we're actually able to do to support them, which is really buying and selling. But they look at all of these other things and then lose trust and credibility.
Yeah. We got two more really quick ones before we get on to our lead interview for the day. Sunshine Coast, unfair dismissal. This seems cut and dried. The reason I bought it today to discuss it is we've had a few unfair dismissal cases that real estate agents have been quite dominant in saying, like, this is ridiculous. This person turned up drunk. It was their fourth warning. Why am I going through unfair dismissal? This one seems crazy. This is a former employee of a Sunshine Coast business. I know this business well. They're good operators. That doesn't mean anything, but there was an unfair dismissal claim lodged against them after the staff member reportedly was employed for only 1 week. Now, rightly so, Fair Work has dismissed the application because the minimum employment period had not been met. Now, I think that's 1 year. I think it's 1 year before you can claim unfair dismissal. But the problem with this, and I would argue here's the real issue, is the original article saying unfair dismissal against this agency, that attracted more media coverage than the one that said, do you know what? It wasn't a claim to start with. So this person has gone out and done some damage, no risk to that person. I often wonder whether there's any kind of legal recompense for stuffing around with the system as much as this.
Yeah, possibly. And you know what? I don't know that this is even maybe a one-off. Like I think, like you said, it's been that disgruntled employee that has created all of the noise out there. And in saying that, though, there's probably other cases that may be valid that are not being heard because this person's done the wrong thing as well, as to why, that it's been thrown out by fair trading in that short period of time. But I think, I think the key takeaway, regardless, is that small, medium, large, whatever size you are, you need to have the proper processes in place from a HR perspective, and there can be blind spots, and we're not all that. As a principal of a real estate agent, you don't know what's sometimes required, but make sure that you actually do have frameworks in place because they can make a really big difference in these situations.
Yeah. Last bit of news before we get on to our main story. Ben Ikin, former Origin player. I think he's a son-in-law of Wayne Bennett, or was a son-in-law of Wayne Bennett. But he's a former NRL and Queensland Rugby League player. As a CEO, he's now moving into proptech. He's been appointed the CEO of SearchX. SearchX are a company that one of the things that they're doing is AML at the moment. But I don't really know how to react to this. It's great news on the back of Origin, but in my experience, particularly in proptech and legal tech, and SearchX is squarely in those two. It seems like an odd introduction. So I don't know where we go with that. I would say that there have been quite a few high-profile cases of rugby league players not acquitting their jobs as the CEO or departing silently from groups in the last 2 months. There's quite a few of them that I'm aware of. So, look, I don't know that this is a good move. It looks to be a move where we're going to rely on Ben Ikin's high profile to get that particular proptech higher in the rankings. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think he was, CEO of Queensland. And so I think what he was doing there was lots of different commercial growth aspects as a part of his CEO role. So, I'm suggesting that that's the reason that the founders have decided to take this path, that's maybe something that we all don't know that Ben Ikin can offer. But I think in these plays, it sometimes is just about, is that celebrity coming in and are they going to actually boost our brand just simply because of their name? I don't know. Maybe he does have that skill set that we don't know.
Well, either way, Ben, if you're listening, welcome to the industry. Welcome to the small proptech community. Hopefully, maybe we can get him on board and find out exactly what he's doing ourselves. I think I'll be seeing him. I think SearchX are a sponsor at the REIQ Lift conference that's coming up. So I would fully expect the CEO to be there, given he's the new one and he's trying to do deals around the area. So happy days. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the fun ride. Ben.
I think it'd be great to get him on, let's learn about what was an attraction for him to come into a business like that, from leaving an industry that he's known and played in, and what's been the attraction.
Perhaps we'll let him find his feet first, Kasey.
His feet at the bottom of his legs.
Yeah. Well, as a rugby player, we would think he knows exactly where those are. Let's go into our main interview with Adrian and Sadna. Adrian, Sadna, welcome to our humble podcast before the weekend. It's wonderful to have you both online.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for the invite.
No problem. We were having a discussion last week about a news article that we had seen in the Elite Agent magazine, which referred to a deal between the REA Group and Harcourts, and it came on the back of another two. We'd seen one with, obviously, with Rain and Horn one with Ray White. Actually, I believe Agents had one earlier. So, Adrian, I appreciate you spending some time this morning to tell us what it's about. Can I ask you, like what we've read in the press release, is that you'll be given access to REA Pro at best in market national rates. Existing Pro subscribers will receive a discount, and the REA will support Harcourts through events in 2027. Was there anything else part of the deal that wasn't part of the press release or hasn't been spelt out publicly?
It is a deal in which we can use their data for those that are on the Pro subscription to enrich our own cloud for the reuse of our own network. So whatever's accessible to them in the Pro subscription is able to be ingested by us to deliver back to our network in our native environment.
Okay, so that's essentially a propensity marketing or propensity lead generation play where you're going to be getting data that you think you might be able to target leads that you can't ordinarily see. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so that data will enrich our already first-party and third-party data that's held within our system.
Okay. So we've seen, as I mentioned earlier, we've seen 3 major franchises announced and a smaller bunch of independents announced on this same deal. Is the deal the same according to you, or is this an exclusive deal, or is this something that is this exclusive to Harcourts? Am I expecting to see it widespread? Will Remax come out and announce it next?
I can't speak for the other agreements because I'm sure they've got the same NDAs as I do. But I would suspect that REA's tendency for the last 20 years has been not to give special treatment to anyone. And I would suspect that it's exactly the same deal across the board.
Mm-hmm. So in the past, and I spoke about this on the podcast last week, in the past, Mike Green had been particularly, not critical, just fairly dominant in the way that he spoke about REA and his and their influence on the industry. I guess my eyebrows raised when I saw this Harcourts deal because in the past he's been fairly dominant about talking about an independent industry that's free from the major portals. Can you speak to that? Has something changed in the Harcourts leadership team or direction?
I definitely can't speak on behalf of Mike, but I can speak on behalf of Harcourts Australia. And what I will say is Mike's comments around the major players and REA in the past are very different to the way that we look towards our vision and our purpose for our network. The vision for our network is for the Harcourts experience to be considered the finest experience in real estate, for our team, being our franchisees as well as my internal team, for our business partners, and therefore, when in alignment for those first two, for our clients. I am not willing to put the Harcourts network in a position where it is behind their competitors in offering the best experience for our clients. In the end, our clients that are at the kitchen table are the most important part of our business.
So you feel that this particular deal is putting Harcourts in a position where are they dominant or are they not disadvantaged by not being part of the deal? I'm trying to understand thought process there.
It's pretty clear that if other franchise groups are going into an exclusive or a deal with a data supplier, that if we do not do that, then we are disadvantaged. Very clear.
Okay. And you've mentioned data, so I assume that the largest play is your belief is the data play is the big one here. The preferred pricing I get, everyone wants better pricing, especially when it comes from the REA group, right? But your play here is the data play. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And that will be the play for all of the networks that enter into this agreement.
When you looked at this, I'm assuming that you looked at other data plays like RP Data, PDS Live, PropTrack is obviously the REA group. Did you look at any of the smaller, more emerging ones that are part of the play?
Yeah, once again, very different data sets. For us, we have looked at all data providers, obviously in close, relationship with REIP as well. We have looked at all data sets, and there is certain key data that is exclusive to REA, which we require.
Has that data been tested on the front line, or is it were these tests in back end, may I ask?
All data is already available to pro subscribers. So yes, I would say it's tested on the front line. But again, how do you test exclusive data to REA against others?
Oh, I more mean in a real estate sense. Like, is the data being tested by active real estate agents, or is it at a head office level where you're going, look, here, supply me with this data package, or is it actually experience from walking into a listing and going, well, we didn't know about that sale, or we didn't know about this particular deal, or here's some pricing that we hadn't seen in the past. Has it been tested on the front line, or is it tested at corporate?
We're a network of choice. So the simple fact is our network don't have to use their CMA data. Our network, in a lot of cases, actually have 3 different data suppliers. Our network could be Cotality, they could be PD, they could be both, they could be REA. So that wasn't the first point of call for this particular interest in REA, and everyone has the same choice as they always have. Keep in mind, 47% of our network were already subscribers.
Yep. When you look at doing a deal with a large software provider like REA or anyone, what kind of assessment or weighting is given to technology and innovation?
Yep, it is pretty high, but not as high because we still have, we're a choices network, so we actually don't mandate the use of any technology. We go into preferred partnerships, which give our network, in our opinion, we have a large tech team that do all of our assessments on those partnerships that we enter. We look at what is the best for our current ecosystem for them from an API, from all different aspects, as well as what is the data that they have exclusive access to that we require.
Focusing on the tech and innovation, though, if I was to look back at the last 4 years, with all the power that is the REA Group, $25 billion company, and the backing of News Corp behind them, if I was to look at the trend, we've gone through a period of generative AI, right, where we're seeing more and more software tools come out of the market. The REA Group has been particularly lacking and lagging behind most of the tech providers in the industry in their providence of innovation, research and development and technology. That there just doesn't seem to be anything coming from that circuit. I know we saw sort of some kind of open AI GPT that they had developed earlier in the year, but over the past 4 years, we haven't seen much in the way of tech and innovation. And I just wondered whether you'd seen something that would give us a glimmer of light to think that REA was actually still developing tech and innovation on the front line.
No, that was not our intention or a weighted decision in this one. So we're not going to them for that. We have other suppliers,
right,
and a current process that we're going through for other pieces of technology that will handle that side of our internal Kaizen cog, our internal tech stack.
Okay, so I'm hearing from you largely that this was a data play, not necessarily around the tech or innovation that the REA Group are providing, and it was simply to give access to data for propensity marketing.
It was to give access
and best prices for portals.
Yep, it was to give access to my network to the largest portals data set, pricing, and access to the most eyeballs in the best fashion I could give them.
Okay, understood. How does this
open to other
how do you see? Yeah, great. Oh, it's great to hear. There'll be a lot of prop tech providers out there, Adrian. That'll be pretty good to. Happy to hear that. So yeah, good stuff. If you like one of the products that you're using is Realtor, do you see like last year? I'm not sure whether you're aware. I assume you are. The REA Group made a bid at Dynamic Methods, which is the forms provider for all of the REI forms. When that bid, I'm going to say, was unsuccessful. I could use the word failed, but let's just go unsuccessful. They appeared to hedged their bets behind Realtair, and from what I can see, are largely pushing that as a forms provider. Are you concerned that by Harcourt's coming across, and I'm not asking you to speak on behalf of Ray White and Rain and Horn, but moving to something like a Realtair format, could that do damage to the real estate institutes as they sit from their forms provider and the way that they bring in income?
We've been a partner of Realtair for the last 2 years. We've entered into a partnership with them before they were purchased by REA in the current format. We went with Realtair after an extensive search for a workflow process that would give the best way for us to integrate the Harcourt's way of sales into the network. So we have been a part of that system well before REA purchased them. The simple fact is, my understanding is those forms can be integrated. I may be wrong there, and I'm happy to be corrected. So the form supplier actually can be any form supplier within Realtair.
Yeah, but should Realtair decide that it can't be, does that then create a bit of chaos for the industry? Let's go with that. We know that the real estate institutes, they derive their money from there. Does that create an issue if at some point Realtair turn that tap off and say, no, it can only come from us?
I'm interested to understand which industry you're talking about. Are you talking about the proptech industry or the real estate agency practice? Because agency practice goes on...
No, most real estate institutes derive their funding from forms at the moment.
All of their funding.
If Realtair suddenly decided one day that they would, well, a lot of them are funded by that. This is why the drama with the ACCC last year and Dynamic Methods and the REA takeover was such a big thing, because a lot of the REIs would cease to exist if that happened. And it seems to me that now REA using Realtair as the forms provider to step in and disrupt that side of the industry. So, if Realtair were to turn around tomorrow and say, okay, no more access for any of the REI forms to our forms provider, I would imagine that would create some chaos in the industry, because the REIs who currently lobby and position on behalf of the government, and, not to throw Mike Green's name in there before, but he's actually been quite dominant in saying that they need to get their act together and be more unified. And now we're in a scenario where they are. Should the forms provider be turned off, which is where they derive large swathes of their income from, I would imagine that would do damage to them across the industry. Well, what would be your take from a Harcourt's perspective if that happened?
I think you're probably jumping at shadows on that one because of the percentage of the network. I can only speak to my network that are using the forms side of Realtair. I think that is incredibly low.
Yeah, well, jumping at shadows I might be, but the REA Group did launch a fairly expensive and hefty bid at the forms provider last year. So there's a precedent there. It's a valid question, but I understand your answer on that. Finally, I've only got one more for you, and then I know I have to let you go. I know you're a busy guy, so thank you for giving us the opportunity to ask you questions today. How does this particular deal, help Harcourt's grow over the next 3 to 5 years?
It's really simple. With the data that we can now ingest and give back to our network in our native environment, that now provides our network, not only agents, BDMs, property managers, everyone, tools within our own native environment to list more, to sell more, to rent more. It's as simple as that. So for us to grow, we need to make sure that we have the best tools in the market to enable our agents to do more dollar-producing activity than the other agents in the industry. So it's very simple. We need to give them the tools to be able to do that. And by restricting them from certain aspects, actually inhibits our growth aspirations.
Is there anything else that you have to add to the listeners out there from a Harcourt's perspective today, Adrian?
No. I think it was important to me, and speaking to Sadhna, that you actually were able to understand the whole aspect, not just what you thought was part.
No, and I appreciate you coming online. Thanks for giving your time and answering those questions. I realise we've got to let you go. So if you want to jump off now, feel free to jump off and we'll ask Sadhna some other questions. But thank you, Adrian, thank you so much for your time today on the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sadhna, for joining us on Before the Weekend. And of course, we
My
just
pleasure.
heard from Adrian Knowles, the CEO of Harcourts Australia. And I'd probably like to, start with the lead in. We've kind of finished talking about, Realtor and the data play as to the decision-making process behind Harcourt's decision to go to REA. So where do you see now REAP's position in the market in understanding that REAP Nexus also provides data, market insights, CMAs? Are you seeing this? That it's going to change, these kind of partnerships with REA are going to change your positioning or REAP's positioning in market?
There's about 3 questions in one there, Kasey. So
There is.
I might just pull it apart and take one at a time. And where I'd like to start is actually getting your listeners to this podcast to really understand who REIP is, because I think for a lot of people that would go, who or what are you talking about? And so, REIP has been around for nearly 11 years now. And we are the only real estate group in Australia that has come together to advocate for the sector's data independence. Now, we want to make sure that insights, innovations and commercial value is reinvested back into the industry that collects the data at the front end. We have now today a membership of about 40% of Australian real estates, which is about 4,000 offices if you assume there's about 10,000 businesses in the country under real estate. And they all share their listing data to our hub. And then we also have some strategic partnerships with proptechs and digital suppliers that top up listing data. So that gives us at any point in time, between 80 to 85% of the listing data that is sitting in our hub. In terms of the partnerships, which is what, as you've mentioned earlier, Harcourts has announced, Ray White, Rain and Horn, and a number of others. I think it's important probably to understand in the first instance that the industry has been sharing listing data with portals and tech providers for free long before REIP existed. And so when you look at the partnerships that we're seeing coming up now, they are not new. I can understand why agencies want to maintain commercial relationships with market leaders, with REA or Domain or others. I think it's also important to note that a lot of the entities that are buying data from REA are also buying data from us. So we are also a data supplier to Harcourts, and you guys are in tech. You know that you can't just live with one data source. You have to have multiple data sources there. I don't believe that the issue is whether the agencies choose to partner with REA. I don't believe that the partnerships change the underlying principle of why REIP exists. I think the critical conversation here from an REIP perspective is how do we make sure that the industry continues to have choice? There's a lot of competition around proptechs and data, how the industry continues to have choice, that we have meaningful alternatives when it comes to data, insight and technology. And I think what we're seeing today is we have got 40% of the industry who are committed to their membership of us, and it is a growing base that we have got. So I think at the end of the day, from our perspective, are we concerned about the decisions that these brands have made? And a lot of them are sitting around my shareholder table. No, because they're not mutually, they're not, tied in exclusively to each other. A long answer to your question.
No. And I think it was great. I think it is important that our listeners understand exactly what REAP is and its position in market and why in which it was obviously founded. I think that's absolutely really important. And, the key here, though, that I'd probably like to draw out of that, if I can, is that choice piece. Totally agree. I think it is important our industry has choice. But are you seeing that, with that 40%, what's the main, usage of REAP that you're seeing in the industry from that 40% of your member base? Or what are the tools they're using that you provide?
Yeah, so we don't provide any tools, Kasey. So I think we've got to have an understanding that and there was a question you asked me earlier around REAP Nexus. So there are two elements here. There's REAP, which is an industry organization focused on data independence, collaboration of agencies coming together, and wellness. There are three pillars that we work on. We have collaborations with proptechs and data suppliers to build our listing data, which we then resupply. Then there is an element where we are working on a further data play with other suppliers that goes beyond listing data. So that could be data that sits in CRMs, in property management products, in forms, in authorities. And, I can't tell you all the names, but we are talking to a number of REIs. Interesting enough, with your question you asked, Peter, we have another number of forms, businesses around the table, and other CRM entities around the table, and we're doing a large number of piloting with our shareholder brands around those unique data sets and how do we bring the value of that back to the businesses within real estate and back to the agent that's collecting that data. And I think that's always been our key role here is, I'm an agent, I go to an office, I go to a property, I collect the data, I bring it back, I put it into my CRM system. We all know there's always been value in that data and that value hasn't been seen as yet. What we're trying to make sure is the industry is the one that brings that value back to the industry, not another proptech, because the danger we have when it's another proptech is we lose control of a lot of that how the data works for the industry. The other part is REAP Nexus. We did a JV with a business out of New Zealand called Velocity, and the idea of that was to bring a CMA product to market. Now that is a startup. It's very much in its infancy. We are still in that. We've got more traction out of the New Zealand market because in New Zealand you don't have as many competitors. Like in Australia, you've got two incumbents that have been established in the market for a significant period of time. And when you bring a third or fourth player into that, it's really hard to get cut through because, as you both know, agents don't like to change. A lot of agents will have a second or third product in their offices just to make sure that what they're seeing on one screen is the same as the other screen, or they don't have all the data on one and they will top it up with the other one. And so what we're doing at the moment is learning, taking the lessons out of New Zealand and using our shareholder brands to bring the product to life in Australia. And that journey is not an easy journey because we have got, two very strong incumbents in the marketplace. But I think the reason why we did that was to give the industry a third choice, to give the industry a choice where, we are at a significantly lower price point. We're using industry data. We are a startup. We're doing our learning out of the New Zealand marketplace, and we've got a long journey ahead of us.
Sana, you mentioned not handing a commercial proptech, ownership of data because, it's not in the best interests of the industry. But I would argue that, 3 of the top 4 franchises structuring a deal with the REA group where I'm assuming there's going to be data transferred, shared across is precisely that. Like that's exactly what they're doing. So what does that mean for REIP? If they're entering a relationship like a Velocity happening about this, do they have
I can't speak on behalf of Velocity, but I think I'll go back to the key baseline of these partnerships, as Adrian mentioned, is around listing data. And as we all know that the listing data is widely available. It's not exclusive. I can go on ChatGPT and ask it to give me the current listings that are on the market for Harcourts, and it will give me a whole list. So the reason why these brands are doing it, because they want to bring back their business, the propensity to list model, which requires them to have huge volumes of data. We're part of that data play. We still provide them with that industry-based data as well. What we're focusing on more so for REIP is the unique data sets that sits within businesses. How do we use that data to create the right insights for our agents to be able to provide better experiences, better advice to their clients? How do they look at that data to understand their market share, to understand their performance, to understand farm areas? All those deep driven insights is what I'm focused on more than listing data, because we've lost the war on that. That war got lost years and years and years ago. And so for us, the focus is how do we not lose the war in all of our data, in all of our businesses? How does the industry maintain some level of oversight over that.
Look, I actually like that cause. That rings true to me personally. How long has REIP been in existence for now?
Well, see, this is the interesting thing, Peter, because it's been in existence for about 10 years. And then there was it had a very different start in its original form. We all know that. We don't talk about the dark old days, but we all know that. And then we had a period of time where kind of nothing happened and it sat. There had, for whatever reason. I joined
it's current.
in 5 years. So in the current,
yeah.
I look at it as a startup, I've got 10 shareholders around my board. And I think the important point here is those shareholders contribute funds every month into REIP to keep it financial. We don't take any dividends out. All profits are reinvested into REIP. When you go on a journey like we are at the moment and you need to get members in, you need to get engagement, you need to make sure that you've got your vision right, you need to make sure that it's the right one for the industry. It is a hell of a journey. And so when I look at where we are 5 years down the track, the next probably 2 or 3 years are going to be the most important for REIP, where we will get the most level of results in terms of what we're trying to achieve.
And so,
Sadhna, do you, in terms of what you're looking to achieve, and I can see that there is that, key difference there in the way you've explained that for our listeners, but do you not also see that is a play that those bigger data players have, and I'm talking about REA and Domain, they're already doing that in terms of those insights. So not just focusing on the listings piece, they're also providing benchmarking, scorecarding style data for the industry as well. So do we not see that there's some competing?
They don't get the insights directly from. So for example, and we'll use this, let's say 3 of our largest shareholders use ABC CRM system, right? We won't name any names, ABC CRM system and ABC property management system. So what we can do within those systems is actually get permissions to be able to pull that data out to actually know how many appraisals are being done in a marketplace. That data does not exist with REA or Domain or portals or anyone else because it sits in that CRM system. We can use that system to pull out how many buyers are actually in the marketplace and attending opens versus what we see on the other side with sales coming through. We can look at property management data and say, okay, so we've got all this marketing and advertising going out. We assume the last rented price was the advertised price because that's what we have access to, which is where the current benchmarks and insights are being provided from. Well, we all know that the actual advertised price may not be the lease price. And there's a whole bunch of properties that get released. So what is the actual vacancy rate? How many properties go to market? What is the actual leased date amount? Is the leased amount versus the released amount? What are the differences? And so these are deep, and that's just a few examples that I've given of the data that is only uniquely sitting in businesses. And so when you can bring to life some of these insights and give the businesses and the agents that power to have a look at the data, have a look at the insights and say, wow, this is how my market is performing. These are decisions I need to make as an agent or business or property manager. But I can also share these with my clients. It brings a whole new lens to what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, great. Well, can you share with me a key success? What are the successes of REIP so far?
I think the fact that I'm sitting here having this conversation with you, I think that I had a bit of a when somebody sent me the link to your podcast last week and said, "Oh, have you heard this?" And I had a bit of a laugh because Peter and I know each other, and I said, "Oh, I wonder why Peter didn't reach out to me." But at the end of the day, the fact that you're talking about REIP, that the fact that we're sitting here on a podcast having this discussion, I think that shows that we're getting cut through, number one. I think one of our biggest strengths and one of our biggest successes is the fact that we've got a committed group of shareholders that for the last 11 years have funded an organisation to do what it is doing today. We've got some great partnerships with proptechs who are specifically REIP partners. And the benefit of that back to our members is that they can go online and have a look. And you guys know there's like thousands of proptechs. There's a new one that pops up every day. And if you're in office and you're sitting there going, which one do I choose? Well, you can go onto our site and you can say, when it comes to AML, REIP have partnered with these guys. So therefore they must have done all of the research and all that sort of stuff behind that. Let's go and bring AML into the picture. We've got REAP Nexus, which, we've already talked about. And so there, again, 5 years down the track, we've done a data play, which I can't talk about now, but, we are in the process of moving down, going down that path, which we will hopefully be able to talk more about towards the end of the year. So they're probably the key successes from my perspective. And, now that we are starting to bring insights, we're able to take a lot of stories to the press. You look at Victoria, one of our partners is Renowned here in Victoria. When the auction market changes were announced by the Victorian government, thank you very much, we did research with Renowned back to the public in terms of how they felt that they were going to react around the auction market. And we were able to share those insights with the industry. So, I can't give you one big thing, but I can give you lots of little things that we are doing that collectively, when you put them all together, bring value back to our members.
Okay. So yeah, I think, what I've heard is why REAP was created and how and which, or what your focus is now, is really around that benchmarking, the insights to allow agencies to understand how they can be performing better, rather than the play on this is what's listed and sold in the market. However, there could be some of those data aspects that will be coming available.
100%. And Kasey, if I can add to that, and I don't know who your audience is or how wide your audience is, and I'm happy to share this within my network. I look at this industry and I think it is at a bit of a crossroads. And you look at all the changes that we're going through. And I constantly say to the industry, now is the time for industry leaders to collaborate. Now is the time for the industry leaders to come together and say, when we look at our industry, putting listing data aside, when we look at all the other data that is available to us in our businesses, how do we as an industry make sure that we have ongoing facilitation of that data to bring the best of those insights and value and information back into the industry, without also giving it away and buying it back, where the profits of that go to shareholders rather than back to the industry. And I think that is a critical piece, that as an industry, we've got to sit back and say, crossroads, now's the time to make choices. And when we talk about this broadly within the industry, it's not about REA needs to go or domain needs to go or the portals are no, it's not about that. It's about self-determination of industry data. And if we don't do it now, if we don't do it today, then we will lose the opportunity. We've got 40% of the industry on the journey. We get another 40% of the industry on the journey, and what a different world we're going to have.
So no, I love that. I think that all resounds with everything. I agree. Like from a industry perspective, I don't know how much of our podcast you listen to, but in episode 2, we were in. I was off at the National Awards for Excellence and the Austeros, and there appears to be a groundswell of unification as far as the real estate institutes are concerned. And so if you were talking, about some kind of data play now, there's been no better time. I think Queensland's been an offsider there for many, many years, and now they appear to be unified and there's a fresh approach in moving forward. So it'd be interesting to see if you had a chat to them. But one final question.
Just to jump in there, Peter. We are talking to 2 REIs at the moment. We have no intention and never, ever had any intention of replacing the REIs. Our goal will be to partner with every single REI in the country and help them bring revenue back into their businesses. And that is the conversations we're having with 2 REIs around the table at the moment. And that is what we want to do with every single REI around the country. We do not want to put them out of business. We do not want to compete with them. We want to partner with them to bring them revenue so they stay relevant. Particularly at the moment, you just got to look at what's happening with all the legislation changes around the country. The REIs at the moment play a really critical role in the representation of the industry and our customers.
Yeah, I wasn't inferring that you weren't playing with them. I was just saying that their direction is onwards and upwards. But if I'm a proptech, if I am a property technology company, and there are a few of them that do listen to this podcast, what incentive or why should I? What's in it for me? Why should I join the REIP? why would I do that?
Well, first of all, feel free to give me a call. I get calls from proptechs all the time, in particular, a lot of startups, and they come to me for a number of reasons. First of all, they come to us because they're interested in obtaining data. So if they want listing data, they will come and have a conversation with us. They have a conversation with us because they want to be able to have access to our marketplace. So, our 40% of our members and more. So they want to have access to a marketplace. And they also want to collaborate with us and, work. They believe in our cause. They believe in our direction. And they want to be able to collaborate with us to ensure that we achieve our goal, and at the same time, they achieve it as well. I mean, I had a conversation with a proptech yesterday, and, he was quite surprised. We don't charge you to become a member. That's not our model. We don't make money out of a proptech because they have an REIP logo on their website. We look at a product. We want to make sure that it brings value back to the industry in whatever form it looks like. We want to make sure that they're the right partner for us. And then we go down the path of helping promote them to the marketplace that we have access to.
But that 40% that you keep mentioning, they don't by default have access to that. There's still choice amongst your members as to whether they use this product or not.
Absolutely. But you've got to have choice. I mean, otherwise it's anti-competitive behavior, right? Everybody's got to have choice. All we're saying is that we've assessed 8 products that do the same thing. Here is the 2 that and it's not because they're paying us any money. And we're very clear on that. It's because we believe that these 2 have the best products in the marketplace at the moment. Now, just because REIP chooses a partner, that does not mean every member or every shareholder has to select that partner. That is not our model. Our relationship with our members is very much around, we'll do the investigation, we'll do the research. Here is our recommendation. But you don't have to use it. This is just a recommendation.
Yeah, but I guess I come back to that same question. Like I always thought the reason for joining REIP was that, look, once assessed, we would put you in front of our members. But like if in Velocity's instance, for example, where they're a data provider and 3 of your majors have now gone to PropTrack or through the REA group, is there, is that of benefit? Like, is it
Velocity through REIP still provides data to all of those 3.
Okay.
So yeah. So again, and I've always said this, whether you're a partner, whether you are REIP, whoever you are, you've got to earn the right to win the business. You've got to bring some value to the table. And, with the 3 that you've spoken about, they all have a form of data deal with REIP as well as other incumbents in the marketplace. So we're not just talking about we're only going to do a deal with REA. I think that's an important thing to remember. And Velocity being our partner is part of that data deal.
Okay. I appreciate your time. Sadna, thank you for jumping on and saying g'day this morning. Is there anything else that you want to say to our listeners before we jump off?
No, really. I mean, if people listening, particularly the proptechs and real estate agents, if you want to find out more and, you've liked what you've heard, feel free to give me a call because, it's not an easy mission to be on, Peter and Kasey, you'll understand that. But I think it's an important one for the industry to understand and participate in because, as I said earlier, if we don't do it now, then I think we might have lost a really good opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Sadna. And
thanks, Sadna.
All the best in building REIP.
Thank you.
So, Peter, we have just finished our interviews with both Adrian Knowles and Sadna Smiles. Some great takeaways for us to be thinking about. I'd love to kind of hear, what are your initial thoughts on what they both shared?
Yeah, look, I mean, referring to Adrian straight up, I have probably more questions than the time allowed for Adrian, and I won't speculate on those. He's obviously generously given me the time this morning, but there are a few things that don't make sense to me as a former operational real estate agent, and one of those is the rush towards propensity marketing. Like a lot of this seems like a rush to propensity marketing. And now I've heard great things about propensity marketing. Don't get me wrong, it should actually sit in every agent's wheelhouse. But like, let me drop on you some statistics that have been headed over. They're American. They're from our friends at the NAR, but our industry is not more that much different from theirs. And in fact, I would say theirs is better on the lead generation side than the Australian side. But some statistics that dropped last week from the National Association of Realtors, who are having their legislative meetings, 46% of sales volume comes from repeat business. That's just under half. 44% comes from referrals. That's a 90% combined has come from a person that the agent already knows. I feel like we're in a market at the moment where we're placing too much emphasis on propensity, and I kind of get why the big brands are doing it. Ray White has been particularly dominant in running out there and saying, we've got Nurture Cloud, we've got Nurture Cloud, we've got Nurture Cloud. NAR released a stat saying that 90% of sales are coming from somebody with a connection to you. That doesn't require propensity. It only requires propensity if you're not doing your job as a realtor or as an agent. So, a lot of this race to that, I don't actually get. I don't understand why there's such a rush. What there should be, in my opinion, is more of an effort to clean up the CRMs and the contact resources that you have at the moment. Is that healthy? Is that talking to each other? Because any old artificial intelligence plugged over the top of a data set will give you that propensity marketing that you're so desperately running out there and seeking. And I've shown time after time in front of audiences how we do that attached to a data source like RP data. So, I'm a little bit mystified as to what all the ruckus is about and why that's worth no less than 4 exclusive announcements if it's just about the data and the propensity marketing. So, that's my take on it. But you can call me an old cynic.
No, look, I agree. I think, most of the data that's inside of CRMs, let's say it's dirty data, right? We've got agents not entering the email address in, they're not putting a phone number in, they're putting a first name, not a last name. So it comes back to how do we collect it and how are we managing that first party data and what processes have we got in place to be continually connecting with the people that we've already done business with and or that have approached us to, at open homes, for example. So I think, I'm with you on a bit of old school real estate transaction processing. And I think I'm going to draw back to something that Tim said a few episodes ago, is that now where we are in the marketplace, it's going to draw out the agents that don't have these types of practices in place and actually operate and know how to operate as an agency without the use of technology. So I don't know why we're focused on that piece when we've got the data right there. It's, are we actually utilizing that data effectively? And like you said, a layer of AI over the top of that. And I've seen what you've done, and how you've delivered that through sessions to show people how they can be pulling this kind of data out from their own data and other third-party suppliers without the use of big major deals.
Yeah, look, I also wonder whether it's a recruitment. Harcourt's saying we're keeping up with the Joneses, if you want to say that. So maybe part of it's that as well. But interesting, and I really appreciate Adrian jumping on. As for Sadhna and the REIP, look, a lot of what Sadhna said in there resonates with me. I agree with that. I'd like to see some way that this was impacting the industry, or be shown some way that's it's impacting the industry in a bigger way before I understood. Like if I was a proptech going there now with those 3 announcements, whether I'd be particularly skeptical about what the benefit would be. And I did ask her those questions and she responded to that. So, I take Sadhna at face value, and that's the way, that would be. If that response, if you're a proptech and you're happy with that, then there's actually a really good cause defined behind Sadhna, and I commend her on that, and I certainly hope that she progresses that cause along. I don't think the announcements helped to the REIP, but I'm glad she came on here to actually announce what they still stood for and how those would work. And as we heard from Adrian, he referred to the fact that even though it's clearly labelled as an exclusive deal, his members will have their choice to do whatever they wish under those arrangements anyway.
Yeah. Look, and I agree. I really appreciate both of their time. I think it's important that they've shared their views and given us those additional insights around the deal and what it actually means as well for REA moving forward.
But we have gone exceptionally long today.
We have.
We've
had some amazing things to chat about though. So.
Yeah, and I apologise if you're still listening at this point. You deserve a medal. You can pick them up from Kasey's house. But look, definitely thought-provoking. It's worth asking these questions of what is actually going on in the industry. And so both Kasey and I appreciate you listening to our humble podcast. If there's something you've heard, if you think this information is of benefit, hit subscribe down below in any of the services that you wish. We're on all of them at the moment. You can email us at hello@beforetheweekend.com. We're also both on all of the social media profiles out there except for the dating ones. Both of us are off the market, sadly, for you guys. But it's really good to have you on with us. I hope you've gone long today. And look, if you're out there and hunting on the weekend, have a good one. I hope it's a happy hunting weekend for you and Melbourneites. If you can do something about this weather, that would be appreciated.
Happy selling and happy leasing to everyone across the weekend. And that's a wrap on beforetheweekend.com.
Ciao.
Breathe